yourself just itching to drive fast, but obviously the streets have speed limits. So what do? You go to track your car. Unfortunately, there's a few things that you have to do to be able to run your car on track in a safe and reliable manner. Today, I'm going to be giving a complete guide of all of the preparation work that you need to do to get on track, as well as all of the paperwork and everything else that you'll be needing to get your car out there and go start having fun. So you'll find this video has been broken up into chapters with every single thing that I'm going to be discussing in this video. So if you're looking for a specific thing, you can skip straight to that section, but we're going to be starting with the brake system. So on track, your brakes hit a lot higher temperatures than on street. Your pads and your fluid are only designed to hit a certain temperature. Beyond that point, the pads will fade and the fluid will boil. When this happens, you're left with a spongy brake pedal. And obviously when you're entering a corner or a hairpin coming in at 100 miles an hour, you probably don't want a spongy brake pedal. So the solution to this is relatively simple. The first is brake fluid. I recommend Motul RBF 600 or 660. That's the respective boiling points of the brake fluid. This is basically high temperature racing brake fluid that is meant to handle high heat. The only downside of this is that brake fluid absorbs water, and when you go to racing brake fluid, because of its higher boiling point, it tends to absorb water a little bit faster, meaning that you're going to have to replace it about every year as opposed to every 2 or 3 years. I would also recommend a brake bleed between every single track day, as any air in your lines could definitely create a problem for you. I personally am not going to be giving any tutorials on how to do these things today, but rather a list of everything you need to do and why you need to do it. There's plenty of tutorials all over the rest of YouTube that will teach you how to do these things. So you're going to need to do a full brake fluid swap and get all of the high temperature racing brake fluid in. You can also use, I think it's Castrol SRF maybe, I don't know, you can look into that. But high temperature racing brake fluid. And then on the other side of that is you have brake pads. Now your stock pads in some cases will be ample, but in most you're probably going to want to go with something a bit more aggressive. Here I have the Carbotech XP8. I highly recommend Carbotech if you're going to be using your street car also on track. If it's like your daily or something like that, you're taking it on track and this is a car you're not just using for track use, I would recommend a brand like Carbotech because their pads, these are the XP8s. They're not super aggressive on the rotor, but most importantly, they account for bedding, which is how your pad deposits material onto the rotor and kind of makes good contact with it. Most other racing pads, you're going to have to run them with a new set of rotors if you want them to bed properly. Carbotech, however, accounts for this, and there's a small bedding process you have to go to that they include with any set of brakes that you buy, but these are relatively inexpensive, they last a long time, and they can handle the high temperatures that you are going to be hitting on track. Swapping brake pads is not very difficult. Pretty much any tutorial on the internet will show you how to do it. It shouldn't take you super long, but these pads are good to swap on for a track day, and then you can throw your street ones back on if it's a car that you're driving on the street as well. So now that your brakes are ready to handle all the high temperatures that a track day will throw at them, the next thing that we need to worry about is your engine oil. Your engine oil is obviously the lifeblood of your car. And in this scenario, you could take any normal engine oil that you would put in your car and just make sure that it's fresh. You don't have to do anything special with the oil. Just change it right before the track day. Make sure that it's fresh oil. And maybe even, I would advise maybe putting a half a quart extra. The reason for that being in high gravity force turns, all the oil is going to slosh to one side of the pan and the other side of your engine might get starved if the oil is not throughout. So a little bit extra can't hurt you. But the other side of this is going to be oil cooling. Obviously your oil is going to be hitting some pretty high temperatures on track, and that's okay. If you don't have any aftermarket oil cooling system, that's fine, but that just means every 3 or 4 laps, depending on where you live and how hot it is, you might have to come into the pits to let your oil cool down. You should never be exceeding temperatures of 245 to 250 Fahrenheit. Any higher than that, and your metal inside of your engine can begin to warp, which will cause irreversible damage and ultimately engine failure. However, the main solution to this is oil cooling, which, as I should put somewhere on the screen, there's a link to the oil cooler that I installed on my BRZ here, and it does a really good job of keeping the oil down. It has a thermostat that kicks on at 185 degrees, and it really never lets the oil go above 200. If you're going to be tracking your car frequently, I would highly advise getting some kind of oil cooler kit for your car and installing it, as it's going to keep your oil temperatures in a much friendlier range, and you can stay on track for longer periods of time. So the next preparation thing that you're going to want to do on your car, and this might not even require you to do anything, is suspension and tires. Tires, I would advise that you have at least 1/8 of an inch of tread left on the tire. You don't want bald tires out on track. You can go with brand new ones if that's fine for you, but it might not hurt to buy a used pair off of eBay to dedicated track use if you're looking to track very often. But 1/8 of an inch should be fine. Take any tire measuring gauge and you should be able to tell. As long as you're not in the red or in any capacity running near bald, you should be fine. Suspension wise, you really shouldn't have to do anything either. I would say just make sure you look around the entire car, make sure that all of your CV roots, everything on the suspension looks good, your control arms are all tightened down. Make sure there's no wiggling. If there's any wheel bearing sounds, anything, get it checked out before you go on the track. Make sure your suspension is in good shape, because if it is not, those problems will definitely propagate on track and reveal themselves in a rather catastrophic manner. The next thing that you're going to want to worry about is your paint. And although this sounds kind of odd, when you're out on track, whether you have a car in front of you or the track just isn't super well maintained, a lot of rocks and whatnot can kick up onto your bumper. You may care about that, you may not. Thankfully, there's a pretty simple solution known as track armor out there. I should be putting a picture of it somewhere, but it's like $20 to $30 on Amazon. It basically is like an adhesive, almost film that you just put all over your front bumper. That'll protect you from any rock chips, and it'll allow you to preserve your paint while still taking your car to the track. I personally use it, and I would highly advise that you do if you don't want your paint to get destroyed, because quite frankly, it can get pretty nasty out there. There could be a lot of rocks flying up at you and whatnot, but that should be a pretty safe, simple solution that wouldn't cost you very much. So now that your car is all ready to go to the track, that just leaves if you are ready. And that entails two things. One, having your car be identifiable by track marshals, and the other being safety. So the first is having your car be identifiable. This just means having some kind of number on it so that you can tell the people working your track day what number your car has, so they can tell you if there's anything that they see, anything wrong with the car, anything they notice, they could tell you what this is. As you can see, I just have a simple number on the side of my car here. I got this from trackdecals.com. They're just magnetic, but it works really well for me. I've been using it for a few years now, and I've never had a problem with it. It was like $100. So if you want to invest in that, you can. If not, there's been plenty of times where I've either forgotten that, or before I had it, where I just took blue duct tape or blue painter's tape. You literally just slap a number on the side of your car, and you should be good to go. Other than that, you're going to need a helmet, and for most open track days, this is really the only form of safety protection that you need, other than a seatbelt, obviously. But all the requirements for a helmet is that it has to be SA 2010 or SA 2015 certified, or even SA 2020 if you want to spend that much. As long as it is within those specs, most track day organizers will allow it on track. Some may check, some may not, but even if they don't check, it's probably advisable to be fitting into this category anyways, as this is really what you need to make sure that you're safe in a crash. Now, you can usually see on the inside, if you pull this foam back, you can usually see the certification sticker right there. And if it has that, then you should be all good to go. You could also just search SA 2010 motorsport helmets, and there should be plenty out there. And that's really all that you need for a track day. Just a helmet that fits and is SA 2010 or higher certified, and some way to identify your car. If you have those two things, there really shouldn't be much more that you need on the registration and safety side of taking your car to the track. So now that both you and your car are ready to go to the track, it's time to find a track to go to. Depending on where you live, there might be a lot of tracks, there might not be that many. But I would advise just looking up open track days near me or anything of that sort. You're likely going to find some kind of driving club or whatnot that rents out the track pretty frequently that you could join along with. Me personally, being in the southeast region of the US, I like Performance Driving Group. They do a lot of events at Sebring and Daytona, and they usually are about every month. They're pretty inexpensive, and any of these groups will allow you to pretty much just jump in with them. All you need to do, register on their website, and you should be able to go and get with them. They might have you do a bit of paperwork, there might be a bit of safety training required. It's usually not that big of a deal. They might inspect your car, in which case look at your respective track organizers' paperwork and website to see what they require out of you. But other than that, most places are pretty laid back about any kind of registration fees, anything like that. So just look for any track day organizer near you, and you should be able to go from there. And last on the list of things that you need to track your car, now you're all registered for the track day, your car is all ready to go, everything on it's safe, you've done all the maintenance, you've upgraded everything that you need to. When you arrive at the track, I would advise bringing a small toolbox with you. This should include any sockets, maybe some screwdrivers, some pliers, whatever the heck you think you might need. Because if anything goes wrong on the track day and you have any issues, you want to make sure that you could likely fix them there. Now, most people at the track will have just about anything that you need, and they're usually super nice and friendly when it comes to asking them for help. But it's nice to have everything that you could think of needing with you. I would also advise bringing a bit of spare engine oil and checking your engine oil levels throughout the day in case you burn any. I would also, on top of that, advise bringing a tire pressure sensor and pressure pump in case you need to inflate or deflate your tires respectively as they heat up on track. Any other tools that you might think that you could need are highly advised. I would bring just about anything that you can reasonably think of. And lastly, on top of that, some kind of can of gas. It sounds silly, but you'd be surprised how much gas you can go through on track when you're running wide open throttle the entire time. So a small 2-gallon gas can should be sufficient to make sure you have enough to finish your track day and get back to where you came from. With all that being said, you should pretty much now know how to prepare your car for the track, make sure that you're safe and reliable on track, register with a track day organizer, and have everything that you could potentially need while you're there at your track day. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to give you the best answer that I can regarding it. As far as any tutorials on how to do these things, they should be all over YouTube. So pretty much look anywhere if you're trying to do those, but I would not skip out on any of this. I know the brakes and whatnot might sound silly, but I promise you it's very important and you'll be glad that you did it. But the big thing with getting on the track is just do it. It's going to be tempting sometimes to sit back and say, oh, I'll do it in a little bit. I'm not so sure about this. Just go, enjoy yourself, and I think you'll be really surprised with how much you'll like doing it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and go have fun on the track.